Hi everyone, good Friday afternoon, and welcome to Go Local Live. I'm Go Local News Editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for kicking off the start to your weekend with us here in downtown Providence. And as we do almost every Friday, start the show with former state representative, former Deputy Secretary of State, now heads up Stages of Freedom, Ray Rickman, to give his big view.
So almost every night I watch Chris Hayes. Sometimes I watch Rachel as well, but anyway, I watch Chris Hayes. And Chris Hayes, here in Providence, went to Brown, says we're in for 18 plus months of noise. Presidential election. And it's very sad because we don't need any noise. We need some content and some context. We need to talk about, as the legislature did yesterday, we need to talk, the House of Reps, we need to talk about choice and abortion, whatever you want to call it, because the Supreme Court of the United States may knock down that right that women have. Now, what not, we need to talk about it because it is a serious problem. We're lucky in Rhode Island, the number of abortions is going down, down, down. It's down to 2,000. And I have this little idea for the Roman Catholic Church that they ought to put more into adoption. They ought to find volunteers. And I have a really big program in mind that we could reduce the number of pregnancies. Abortions would go down even more. One of the reasons abortions are going down is several low-income groups are having fewer pregnancies for the first time in 30 years because the young women have decided they want to go to work instead of being pregnant at 19 or 18 years old. And they've decided this on their own. There has been no help from the Roman Catholic Church, even though most of these girls are Catholic. There has been no help from the government, even though all of these girls are citizens of Rhode Island. And the list would go on with the lack of help. The Urban League of Rhode Island, that used to have a robust adoption program, is underfunded and has virtually nothing for black children, black young women. And the list goes on and on. So here we are on the floor of the House, back and forth about abortion. And where is the programming, the discussion about what to do to avoid pregnancy? At some, I won't name the particular school, but at some elite schools, colleges, prophylactics are available to boys all over the place. One of these colleges, 17 places you can get a free condom. In the city of Providence, there is virtually no place for a young man to get a free condom. Can you hear we're arguing about the end result instead of arguing about how not to start down that path and get to that end result? I hate to be so rational in a society that's irrational, arguing about making a young woman having a baby, when in fact there should be a program in place that makes it possible for her not to get pregnant. I don't know how to have this conversation, but I wish, the governor of Rhode Island would take the $14, $15 million from the useless, awkward 1960 nuclear reactor at URI, which is the last one. Eisenhower gave away 50 of them, and we have the only one that still chugs along. I say chug because it produces nothing. Last year they fried strawberries to look at what fried I'm laughing how sick this is to spend $14 million to do that. Do you know how much training and pregnancy avoidance and condoms $14 million could buy? You listening, Governor?
Just break down.
Just break down. Let's talk about the brouhaha here in Providence this week. Trinity Rep announcing that it's putting on a stage production of The Prince of Providence. And former CNC Chief of Staff Artine Kaloyan and CNC nephew, the spokesperson for the CNC Foundation, Brad Cerqueta, both took issue, A, saying the former mayor never liked the book, and
Of course
B,
he didn't like the book. Have you read it?
and B, they said they weren't consulted. Is this all PR is good PR?
Well, I think, yeah, right. I think all PR is good. You know, sort of in Warhol, everybody be famous for 5 minutes. I think the book, which is a very fine book by Mike Stanton, an investigative piece, but also really quite well written, elegantly written, is a good basis for a play about Buddy Cianci, a television series, whatever. Even though I have to confess I'm tired of Buddy Cianci and the whole sort of cologne-soaked persona. I don't think they can do very much about it. The book, again, it's a respectable book, a bestseller, and I think they're just going to have to suck it up. Too bad, you know.
Very big question. Will you go see this production?
No, I will not go. I will not go see it because I'm tired of Buddy Cianci.
So we'll not go see it. I think we probably have heard the last of the brouhaha. Trinity, of course, is going to put it on. Right. It will be interesting to see who they cast as Buddy.
It'll be very interesting. I think years ago, I think Oliver Platt was going to be cast in a movie version to be directed by Michael Carenti, who turns out to be, of course, the nephew of Mr. Cianci, chief of staff, a chief of staff who ended up going to prison for his work with Mr. Cianci. So somebody like that, a good character actor. I'll be interested to see how they can find somebody who looks like Buddy too.
All eyes, of course, on Trinity Rep moving forward. Let's talk a little bit about things taking place both here in Rhode Island and nationally. Purdue Pharma, who the state of Rhode Island, along with others, is suing for what they say is their role in the opioid crisis. As GoLocal has reported, the governor has taken significant amount of donations from Jonathan Sackler of the Purdue Pharma family and board member. Now Purdue purportedly is looking at filing bankruptcy
to deal with all these lawsuits. Right. A couple of things there. I kind of wonder if, based on some of the documentation of what the members of the Sackler family are still involved with the company, and they've tried to push their association with the company in some distance, in terms of trying to press salesmen to sell more fentanyl and all this stuff, I wonder if there's some criminal liability. We'll find out, not just civil law liability. Well, it certainly would be lawsuits almost to the end of time. There'll be lawsuits as long as there'll be documentaries about Buddy Cianci.
That's the question of what did you know and when?
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Based on what we know about the physiological effects of this stuff. I think the central idiocy of the whole opiate thing was the assertion that somehow these opiates were not addictive, as if opiates are not, by definition, addictive.
And they knew,
and they knew.
Actually, GoLocal in one of the recent articles has a fantastic, if you see it, kind of promo video that they had used back in the day. It will make your skin shake or
But I wish the governor, I'll do a little editorial, I wish the governor would give the money back. This is a deeply compromised family, the Sackler family, despite the number of bronze plaques they put on museums and fancy colleges. The Sackler building at Harvard College and so on and so forth. You know, it's just too compromised. The governor's political ambitions, everything will not be unduly harmed if she just gave back the money.
Well, we shall see. We've asked numerous times. Let's talk a little bit, let's go outside, maybe up the hill, if you will. The Providence Committee on Foreign Relations, of which you've been a longtime member, is welcoming a former chief of staff to the British royal family. Miguel Head is currently now at Harvard University. He's going to come speak
to the princes. He's the chief of
yes.
staff, and certainly an advisor to the family in general.
And is coming on next Thursday to speak at the Hope
Club.
Right. If folks are interested, we have those links up as
well. About the royals, he's going to, I'm sure, discreetly, but accurately.
You want to talk about Brexit?
Yeah, I want to talk about Brexit because the reason he's in Cambridge this year is to do research on the demography and the kind of socioeconomics of votes like Brexit. Maybe you could say by extension of votes for Donald Trump too. And this intrigues me a lot, but this shows you what a moron I am, because of course everyone who wants to hear about the royals. When I communicated with Mr. Head, he was very good humor about it. I said, well, you probably don't want to talk about the royals. I said, no, to the contrary, I'd be happy to talk about the royals.
The question is, how much can he talk about?
Yeah, how much can he talk about the royals? I think he will be he's clearly a very interesting man, of Portuguese background, by the way. But I do hope he talks about some of the seething resentments that helped lead to the rather narrow Brexit vote.
And that'll be this coming Thursday at the Hook Club at the Providence Committee on Foreign Relations. But let's get a little closer this weekend. What can we expect in your column?
Well, let me see. What are we going to talk? I talked a little bit about Watergate, because Watergate in terms of the new brewing impeachment process against Donald Trump. And I think it'll be interesting because Donald Trump is far more corrupt man than Nixon ever was. But I talk about it's a political process. Whatever the legal and constitutional elements, removing a president or beginning the process of removing a president is a political process. They've got to get the vote in the House to impeach him, which basically is an indictment, and then it goes over to the Senate. And I think given the way the Senate's run out, it's narrowly controlled by the Republicans and controlled with iron, if sometimes a moral efficiency by Mitch McConnell. I think barring a change of world historical proportions, I think it's highly unlikely, in fact virtually impossible, the Senate would vote to convict Donald Trump because they're worried about his base. And something like 85% of Republicans think Trump is wonderful.
So you parse this in the column this weekend.
Yeah, so if Trump were, I don't think it's going to happen. Trump were reelected, but somehow the Democrats had control of both houses of Congress. Maybe it would happen after that. But I think it's much more likely that Trump would leave as these investigations, even at the state level, especially in New York, move in and expose members of his family to unpleasantness.
So other than politics, what else we got going on?
You know what bobwhites are? You know, they're birds that make a lot of noise. Bobwhite. There was an interesting piece in the New London Day about why we don't hear many bobwhites anymore. The reason is that it used to be there were a lot more open fields and pastures and so on in New England, even through my boyhood. Now this is pretty much grown over, interspersed, of course, with housing developments and McMansions. So there aren't as many bobwhites. This piece I thought was interesting take on kind of how humans change nature around them.
Sounds
which I thought was engaging. I think New Englanders love nature stories.
Anyway. I heard the birds this morning. Did you hear them?
I did not. No. But I've been increasingly spending time in my cellar because it's safer there. And could I talk just one quick thing?
Sure thing.
We talked about Buddy being back, and will it ever end? The pedestrian bridge here, which they're building over the Providence River, GoLocal has written about that.
Bricks of gold.
Bricks of gold, very expensive. On the other hand, I think since it will be not only a way of getting across the river, but a form of a destination, really, a kind of destination, it's kind of a wooden deck. And I think the money is probably worth it.
We shall see. They're getting close to completion.
I know. I hope so.
Look lovely, and look forward to seeing it.
Yeah.
And look forward to reading your column this weekend.
Great.
Okay. Bob Whitcomb, we'll let you
Ciao.
go. And don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back here on Go Local Live, talking theater and politics.
Ta-da.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Go Local Live. I'm Go Local News Editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for joining us this Friday afternoon. I'd like to thank Bob Whitcomb and Ray Rickman. And now my next guest, Pete Deffitt with the Manton Avenue Project. Thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely, thanks for having me, Kate.
I know you're a busy guy because this weekend the Poetry Play Festival with the Manton Avenue Project is taking place. But I want to take this a step back. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your involvement with the Manton Avenue Project.
Okay, so I have been involved with the Manton Avenue Project for 15 years. I started off as a volunteer. This is our 15th season, so we're having a big gala celebration on May 13th. Come support us. It started off as a very small organization. It's a playwriting program for students in Olneyville, which is a neighborhood in Providence, for those of you who don't know. And young people come together with adult playwright dramaturgs and write plays of their own around a theme, which this time around happens to be the poetry plays. And then we produce those plays with adult actors over the course of a weekend. This particular weekend will be at the Wilbury Group in Providence, which is 40 Sonoma Court in Olneyville. What else? That's pretty much the history of the Manton Avenue Project.
I'll tell you, if you go on their Facebook page and there's all the videos of the young folks talking about, what the play means to them.
Absolutely.
I mean, the impact that this has on young people, getting involved with the arts and, taking a look at themselves, taking a look at society. You've been at it for 15 years.
Yeah, and we really believe we're not necessarily trying to create the next generation of young artists. We're really trying to give these young people resiliency and the tools that they need to succeed in the world.
So the festival that's taking place this weekend already kicked off yesterday, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, last night was our first performance. We had a small but very happy crowd. And we'll have performances tonight at 7 p.m., Saturday at 7 p.m., and a Sunday matinee at 2 p.m.
And of course, we'll provide links to that as well. So who should be turning out? I mean, folks who want to support the community, support the arts. Manton Avenue Project, as you said, has been around for so long. But I'm sure you're constantly inviting new people to say, come and check us out.
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, first and foremost, it's just a blast. The plays are incredible. We have characters like Blue Alien French Fry, a chorus of angels that come down from heaven to deliver a poem. I mean, it's crazy. And there's a character named Mr. Glasses, who is based on the student's actual pair of glasses. And this is a sequel from last year, who is partnered up with Leonardo da Vinci.
Mr. Glasses and Leonardo da Vinci.
Yeah, they go discover a new planet. I won't tell you what the name of the planet is, because you'll have to come out and find out what that is.
So how important is this when we hear, especially in the schools right now, obviously budget issues face every city and town around Rhode Island, and clearly we know of the impact here in the city as well. How significant is it to have this arts outlet for young people in a time where they might not necessarily even get this level of exposure to schools? People always talk about the critical component that arts provides, and here this is an enrichment program, after school program. How important are the arts to these young folks who come out and have this opportunity, interacting with great mentors, and then but being able to experience this?
Well, we start with students just with William DeBate Elementary School. We've partnered with them for the last 15 years. But as our program has grown, students have wanted to continue with us. So we now have a middle school program called Map in the Middle and Teen Voices. And those students now have taken over the backstage roles. So they run the board ops, they run stage management, they take care of props, and they're also mentoring the younger playwrights. So I think just the mere fact that our program has grown and grown and grown with time shows you how important it is to the public schools.
And I assume that you've had some good community partners, community investments. I mean, obviously, being a nonprofit, depend on the kindness of those who know the value of this program and say, we want to support this.
Absolutely. So for instance, this time around with the poetry plays, we worked with local poets Christopher Johnson, Shea Rivera, and Vadak Kumba. And we also partnered with the Providence Community Libraries to go in and look at different books of poems and talk about different ways of expressing yourself through poetry. And also partnered with City Arts, which is a visual arts organization for young artists on the south side of Providence, and they created all the projections for our backdrops.
Well, this is a true community project that is the fruition this weekend, the Poetry Play Festival. And you alluded to it before, and I just want to make sure that you have the opportunity to give it a plug. The gala, again, speaking of fundraising opportunities to support the Manton Avenue
Absolutely. We raise about a quarter of our budget at our annual gala each year. That'll be May 13th. It's a superhero-themed gala. And you can check us out on Eventbrite or our website to find out more information, mantonavenueproject.org.
Well, I can certainly see the superhero aspect of it. You too can be a superhero for kids who
Or Shiro.
Shiro, superhero, super Shiro. Again, for youth who have this amazing opportunity to get exposure to the arts and playwriting and backstage all these opportunities that I'm so glad you were able to come in here, let folks know a little bit more about. But again, we're going to provide those links. The Poetry Play Festival, if you want to be inspired by youth here in the city, I'm sure you'll want to go check it out. So Pete Duffett, thank you so much for taking
Thanks
this
so
time
much
to
for
come
having
in.
us, Kate.
And finally, we're going to be back with our last guest here talking a little bit of politics here in downtown. Don't go anywhere.
Uh-oh.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Go Local Live. I'm Go Local News Editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for tuning in this Friday afternoon as we kick off your weekend. I want to thank Ray Rickman, Bob Whitcomb, Pete Duffett with the Manton Avenue Project. We're going to finish up with some politics. John Donegan, Cranston City Councilman, thank you so much for coming all the way to the city.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate your coming in because the Cranston City Council is looking, like a lot of cities and towns across the state and country, at the potential for a plastic bag ordinance. Now, I believe it's called the Cranston Plastic Reduction Ordinance.
Yes, that is correct.
So talk a little bit about the impetus behind this. Obviously, I'm sure looking at other cities and towns as examples and working across the aisle as well to put this together.
Yeah, so when I was running, I thought this would be a good idea. We've seen other municipalities in Rhode Island take this measure. It's important to protect our environment, and I'm incredibly grateful that we've been able to do this in a bipartisan way with the council majority leader, Christopher Papalauskas. We had actually both introduced our own ordinance within 24 hours of one another. We realized this, we met for coffee, got together and put the best parts of both of our ordinances together and submitted it to what we have now and what we'll discuss Thursday night in our ordinance committee meeting.
So tell us a little bit about the nuts and bolts of it, what a rollout of this would look like, because that's really where the rubber meets the road.
Absolutely.
Especially when you get public input pertaining to it, how it impacts stores, how it impacts consumers. So give us a little bit about what that hybrid piece, that ordinance looks like now, as you said, taking the best parts.
Absolutely. So first of all, it wouldn't go into effect until, or it wouldn't be enforced until the first of the next year.
Okay.
So it's going to give businesses plenty of time to change their operations and prepare for this change. Essentially what it will be is that at the point of sale for businesses, you won't be able to get that thin single-use plastic bag. Mm-hmm. This isn't prohibiting someone from going to a market and picking up chicken and putting it in that container, that plastic bag, or loose vegetables or nuts or anything like that. That's totally fine.
Okay,
we
so
don't
plastic bags in supermarkets still exist, like for the produce, as you said.
Yes, exactly.
When you put your onions in, you pull it off and you tear it. Okay.
Right. We don't want people's raw chicken and their onions getting mixed up. We don't need any salmonella poisoning. We're just talking about at the point of sale. That will drastically reduce the amount of garbage in our city. It'll drastically reduce the amount of plastic that's entering the Patuxent River, that's being collected on the side of our bike paths, in our neighborhoods, on roadways, in our wooded areas, Mashantucket Lake. It's going to drastically reduce all of that.
And so let's talk a little bit about the nuts and bolts. Thursday, let's talk about the introduction to potentially a passage.
So Right now, it is co-sponsored by 5 members, or excuse me, by 4 members. Honestly, I am optimistic that it will pass out of committee, and I think that it will pass on the council. The question is whether or not our mayor, Mayor Fung, will veto it, at which point we would need 6 votes to override that. That's probably a bigger hill to climb. It's something that we still need to, flesh out in ordinance and get the thoughts from the rest of the committee members. I know that others have expressed some concerns how it will impact business, and I think that we can address some of those things in council, in the committee meetings. We'll take the input from the community, both constituents, business owners, of course from the administration, and people that might be opposed to this. I think that we can find a common middle ground to get something passed that will protect and help our environment in Cranston.
Have you had conversations with the mayor about this?
I have not personally spoken with Mayor Fung about it, no.
So you don't know how he would approach this particular piece of legislation?
Well, I know that the day after Chris and I had put forward the ordinance, Mayor Fung was on Rhode Island Public Radio, and he did oppose it. That's okay. He's well within his right to do so, and I hope for a constructive conversation with him about it come the committee meeting.
So with this focus on Thursday with the committee meeting, would you say this is sort of the big focus of yours at the moment? And what else would you like folks to know about council work while we have you here in Providence?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was elected for the first time this past November. I've been a lifelong Cranston resident. And so working now on the council, there are a few other items that I have proposed. The first thing I did was taking what my constituents wanted, and they felt that the council could be more open, more transparent. People could have a greater voice and access to what's actually going on in the city. And so the first piece of legislation that I proposed in the Cranston City Council was to film all public meetings. That way people have access to them. A lot of people can't get to meetings because they're working a second job at night. They're taking care of family members. So that's one thing that I'm going to continue to push forward. I know that the administration said it will be included in the budget.
Oh, fantastic.
Hopefully we see that come through. If not, I think it needs to be codified in Cranston Code. Another thing that I've introduced were welcome packets. Not everyone in Cranston is as fortunate enough as I to be a lifelong Cranston resident. And so I think we can welcome people into the city by sending them information on who their elected officials are, how to register to vote. We need to get more people out to vote. Some of the great services we have in Cranston in the programs, the Park and Recs Department, the schools, our local businesses. Sending people information about all of those things. That way when they come into the city, they know all that we have to offer, because it's such a great city and we have so many great programs. And what else could we include in that? Maybe a reusable bag.
Going back again to this proposed ordinance, again, going to committee on Thursday. We'll provide links to that as well. We'll continue to follow it in Cranston because, as we've seen, it's a town-to-town battle,
yes,
and all politics are incredibly local.
Absolutely.
So, John Donegan with the Cranston City Council, I so appreciate your taking the time to come in
Thank you.
today. We appreciate your watching. Be sure to check in with GoLocal Prov online and, of course, on Facebook over the weekend. And if you missed it this morning, Laura Alfonso was live from the New England Outdoor Living and Garden Show at the Waterfire Art Center. She had 3 guests this morning. She'll be back there tomorrow previewing what's in store for folks who are interested in that. It was a beautiful space. Be sure to check that out. And we'll be sure to catch you next Monday when Josh Fenton is back here in studio for Business Monday on GoLocal Live. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel.